Hi everybody, my name is Mona. I'm doing an applied collaborative PhD. I'm based at Abertay University, but this is a partnership with the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland and the National Theatre of Scotland. So I'm basically based most of my time at Abertay, but then a little bit at RCS as well. I'm going to talk today about the first stage of my research project, which happened in October on Inchcolm Island. It was called Inchcolm Project, and it was showcased as work in progress. It was set on Inchcolm Island, which is in the Firth of Forth, for an invited audience of 50 people from both performing arts and game design backgrounds. Inchcolm Project was a proof of concept that aimed to make apparent the connections between video games and performance, and to blur the lines between physical and virtual worlds and bodies. In designing the 2-hour journey on Inchcolm, I drew on both theater and game design methods and brought the world of Dear Esther to life on Inchcolm. What resulted was an interplay between the two islands, one physical and one virtual, and 3 experiential worlds. So we had the world of the performance, we had the world of the game, and Inchcolm as a world in and of itself, its physical presence in constant tension with the visiting worlds. You can see the island from an aerial view here. On the right part of the island, we have all the military buildings. It still kind of carries the traces of its wartime efforts. You have derelict buildings, rails, and battlements. And on the left side, there's a 12th century abbey that's still pretty much intact. And that kind of carries the remains of its monastic history. I chose this island due to its stunning similarities with the island of Dear Esther. I've known quite early on that I wanted to respond to the game through a live performance that, similar to Dear Esther, is shaped and in turn shapes its environment. So what was Inchcolm Project? Well, it really depends who I'm talking to. So to game designers, I would describe it as a live mod of Dear Esther, or a mod in the live, if you will. To theater or performing arts practitioners, I would describe it as a translation or even an appropriation of a video game using the language and conventions of performance. It is, however, not a live version of Dear Esther. It shares the island, the themes, the mood, and the atmospheres, and the stories of the 2 fictional worlds sometimes collide, but it is not a rendering of Dear Esther in a physical environment. So the project itself had three parts. The first one was a promenade performance that used geotagged sound and visual installation to augment the island. The second was a projection of Dear Esther played live in the Abbey. And the third was a musical performance by Mantra Collective, who arranged and performed Always in Ascension from Jessica Curry's award-winning soundtrack. The site-specific promenade performance was called Dear Rachel. You can see the kind of like the 3 stages here. Dear Rachel, so just the promenade performance, which lasted an hour, consisted of 10 installations and 22 audio logs. The time for exploration was limited to only an hour, and they could play as they choose. They could rush to get all the audio files, or they could stand still, listen, and observe. The limited abilities of the software brought along this unexpected constraint. The audio would only play in the tagged area, so the audio files are marked on the map as the little paper boats, while the installations are mostly on the right side there, and this is kind of an abstracted map that they were all given when they landed on the island. So the audio would only play in the tagged area. Moving out of the area would stop the playing of the audio file. Nature, of course, added additional constraints. So the tide and the wind shifted and covered some of the audio files. The thickness of the abbey and tunnel walls destabilized the GPS, forcing the audience players to stretch, reach out, hold on to, climb, crouch, and wait. The environment was piercing through, constantly forcing them to explore the boundaries of their physical prowess, to discover and engage with the narrative. But in return, the changing lights, the clouds, the shadows, the rain, the wind, the sea were a constant variable, which meant that the environment was constantly dynamic. The sound, atmosphere, mood, and vistas were at least partly randomly generated. Patterns emerged from the combination of the designed, of the natural, and the human elements. The player's audience were constantly on the move, scattered around the island, standing still on edges and shores, looking out at sea, ghostly and silent, which led to unexpected encounters and emergent landscapes. They were an active part of the landscape, contributing to each other's narratives. This echoes Jenkins' call for game design as narrative architecture to forms of environmental storytelling that engage with the full array of the space abilities, its evocative power, its storytelling abilities, and its potential for emerging narratives. The story responds to the game's themes, dealing with guilt and loss, forgiveness and redemption, while in the same time engaging with the wider ongoing debates surrounding refuge and refugees, safety and humanity. The man in the arrestor is coping with the loss of his wife Esther to a tragic accident that he feels responsible for. The man in the Rachel is tormented by the images of a capsized boat, a mother and her infant child sinking under the weight of their fake life jackets. The traumatic event is projected onto the environment, a violent disruption of the natural landscape. This event is visually represented through recurring colors, displaced and misplaced objects, unnatural assemblages of natural and man-made materials. In the arrestor, the island is gradually coated in fluorescent green writing, paint, car parts, emergency room paraphernalia, chemical symbols, ultrasounds along birds' nests, broken eggs, feathers, and bird bones. In the Rachel, Inchcolm is overgrown by parasitical fluorescent orange, rubber and tape, dinghies, buoyancy aids, barbed wire, metallic wind chimes, fishing nets, life jackets, alongside bark, feather, eggshells, twigs, shells, and seaweed. In terms of physical presences, the island in the arrestor is haunted. Elusive silhouettes can be seen in the distance, always out of reach. In designing the performance, I wanted to use these ghosts as an additional connector to the world of the game. Inchcolm, along its troubled history, has been inhabited by holy men, prisoners, soldiers, the unwanted, the sick, and the dying. Its abbey was a pilgrimage destination and its consecrated soil a coveted burial ground. In response to the site's history, the ghosts look for absolution, redemption, and forgiveness. This is achieved through the performed and repetitive act of walking as penitents. It is the main mechanic of both the game and the performance, and in addition to its purely functional purpose of progressing the narrative, it is also tied into the fiction. The ghosts on Inchcolm are the walkers, people who need to journey through their past to understand and forgive, and by making peace to find freedom from the island. The walkers are the audience players, as well as the narrator characters and the musicians. The musicians were performing instrumental solos from the video game soundtrack composed by Jessica Curry and arranged by Lucy Holland and David Jamieson. Using live music was another design choice. The game was non-diegetic, location-triggered music, but diegetic sound. We opted for diegetic sound. The environmental sound and music originated in the physical world and would constantly pierce through the non-diegetic mediated voiceover narration. The live music was also used as an additional buoy for guiding navigation. The musicians could be heard before they could be seen. The musical puzzle was completed when they performed Always and Ascension as an ensemble. The paper boats are there for the taking, for writing a heavy thought and releasing it at sea. This is yet another connection to the world of the game, where the letters to Esther were folded into paper boats and launched at sea. This act frees the character from the weight of the past and allows him to begin his final ascent and leave the island. The game and promenade performance share the same fictional island, and the two stories were perceived by most of the participants as a continuation of one another. The two islands and three worlds coexist, overlap, and tease each other, taking turns at being central stage. In designing the journeys, installations, and sounds, we played in between the worlds, the natural and the made, the fictional and the real, the physical and the virtual, elements constantly transgressing and trespassing. We played with perspectives, vistas and detail, shadow and light, proximity and distance, revealing natural materials blended into unnatural shapes, virtual objects materializing on the island, invisible traces made visible, some responding to audience movement, some to stillness, some designed to be played with, some designed to be observed, micro and macro tableaus. We celebrated the contrast, the juxtapositions and layerings of environments, the bleedings, the piercings and the slippages, the eerie and the distorted. Do I still have time to play the trailer? Yeah? Go on then.
Dear Rachel, we have all found refuge on this island. Kings and hermits, shepherds and soldiers, sinners and holy men. We are all equally real and equally imagined. This island, the Abbey, those blocks up on the hill, they pose no threat to our imagination. They just put it on and wear it like a life jacket. Humans, gulls and ghosts have lived and died on this island. We are the last in a long line of refugees. The walkers stepping on the consecrated ground that burns our feet. We have shunned the world, and in doing so, the world has shunned us back. We walk the shores, the caves and the hills, broken like the waves that hold us. There is no salvation here, only world peace.